The legends are true. Overwhelming power!
Sauce of destiny.
Yes! The most legendary sauce has arrived as McDonald's transforms into the anime world of WickDonald's. The greatest flavors unite in all new savory chili McDonald's sauce to make your 10-piece Wick Nuggets, fries, and Sprite ultra-powerful. Unlock manga comics with every meal and sit down for a new anime short every week only at WickDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba, go!
At participating McDonald's for a limited time while supplies last.
What's the easiest choice you can make? Window instead of middle seat? Picking a vendor who sends a great gift basket? Outsourcing business tasks you hate? What about selling with Shopify? Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your online shop stage to the first real-life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit a million orders stage. Shopify's there to help you grow. Whether you're selling scented soap or offering outdoor outfits, Shopify helps you sell. Wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/try. Go to shopify.com/try now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/try.
Welcome to 3 Yards Per Carry, a podcast covering the Miami Dolphins and the NFL. Now, here's your hosts, Chris, Alf, and Simon.
And we're on, and welcome to another edition of 3 Yards Per Carry. I'm Alfredo Arteaga. Simon Clancy is here. Chris Kaufman is here. And today we're going to recap the Combine. But first, price picks for you out-of-staters, by the way. I have to say that. You can use the promo code 5, F-I-V-E. You deposit $100, you get $100. It's as simple as that. BetterEdge.com. If you're in Florida, you can still play with BetterEdge.com. Go to BetterEdge.com/5 reasons, and you get $20 just for signing up. All right. Combine was what? By the way, what happened with Mims? Do we have clarification on that? Because they're saying that he didn't run the shuttle, so that time, that ridiculous time that he had, that was not real. Do we know anything about that? Because I was all over
It was somebody else, and I think that there was an ordering there was an ordering problem with an extra entry or something like that. So that time belonged to somebody else.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then we're gonna recap in the days in the order that they appeared. Defensive linemen and linebackers first. This was a star-studded group, I thought, especially at defensive tackle. A lot of 3-techs, and it looks like they might have to replace Christian Wilkins some way or not or the other. I came away pretty impressed with Mekhi Wengo. I didn't think he was that athletic. He looks good on tape, but man, 4.85 at what did he weigh in at the Combine? What was his weight? Let me see. Oh, he was actually a little lighter than I expected, 284. I thought it was a great group, headlined by Byron Murphy. Your thoughts on this group, and if you want to sprinkle in some linebackers, you could do that too, Simon.
Simon, are you on mute?
Sorry, I hadn't pressed the the button on my microphone. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, we got you.
Perfect. Sorry. I'll just pick up. Oh yeah, Alf, I thought it was an interesting group. I think it was headlined by the Texas guys for different reasons. To me, Murphy has always stood out in this particular process as just a special player. But I thought Braden Fisk of Florida State had those kind of, I loved his sort of signature. Oh yeah, as he crossed the finish line and ran a 4.78. I thought he was absolutely outstanding in drills. 33.5-inch vert, 9.99 broad jump. 4.37 short shuttle, which was faster than Aaron Donald's 10 years ago, coming in at 6'4", 292. And I think what he showed on tape, we've talked about this before, but the Combine, I think to all of us, is the opportunity to essentially back up what we've seen on tape. And if guys are suddenly that you've seen on tape who sort of haven't really played particularly well, and they turn up like Mike Mamula and blow the whole place up, that's when you go back and sort of recheck the tape. But I think a lot of what Fisk did at Florida State, that sort of showed up for me on tape in terms of what he was able to do at the combine. There was just some interesting, Brandon Dorlus, we talked about him in OnlyFins. I think I think Dorlus was intriguing. Marcus Harris is a guy that I'm very intrigued about. Is a guy that I know that scouts have talked up as somebody who's not played a lot of football, but who they like. But at 286 pounds, that sounds ridiculous. I kind of wanted to see him run faster than a 507. And obviously with the Dolphins, you're looking at some of those bigger guys, McKinley Jackson weighed in at 326, Jordan Jefferson at 313, Zion Logue at 314, all these kind of big guys that you'd expect the Dolphins, if they're going to inherit this Anthony Weaver system, Justin Rogers at 330, some big human beings there. I mean, T'Vondre Sweat at 366 pounds is just, I mean, that was just a monstrous. But, I thought overall that the class looked good. There were a couple of guys who I didn't think perhaps were as dominant as maybe you thought they would be. And that's fine. There was nobody that really stood out. And I suppose I didn't think Leonard Taylor did an amazing job. And I don't think he has a great resume necessary to fall back on. I think, he's shown glimpses on tape. But, I didn't think he made a great fist of things in terms of drills and testing, and his 781 3-cone I thought was extremely disappointing. But for me, the Texas guys and getting the size for Sweat, because obviously we didn't get a size for him at the Senior Bowl, and then Fisk, I think, Chris, they were the standout performances for me in terms of the interior defensive linemen.
Yeah, I think Fisk clearly stood out, and he was a big winner on the weekend for all the right reasons. Like you said, he is a handful on tape. I thought he was a handful in the all-star practices too. I know that during the game there was a lot of Fisk versus Christian Haynes in the game, and watching those two battle one another, because I think Christian Haynes is going to be a really good NFL guard. Watching those two, it looks like a heavyweight bout. It looks like two NFL players beating up on each other and both getting in their licks, and it's a pretty good matchup. I think he showed that at the combine. I think he showed that he has the ability. I don't know, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, because you've got a much better handle, Simon, on the position, say from below, say, Byron Murphy, Johnny Newton, T'Vondre Sweat, those kind of guys, Braden Fisk, and Chris Jenkins. I don't know if this is the class, unless you're using the 21st pick on Byron Murphy or Johnny Newton. I don't know if this is the class where you really replace a Christian Wilkins.
No, I don't think so.
No.
Murphy could be that kind of guy. Do you know what I mean? He's got that interior quickness, and he's added pass rush to his. I thought last year he added pass rush to his game that you probably hadn't seen on tape before. So I think there's a Wilkins kind of esque ability there. I think Tyler Davis at Clemson's another guy potentially, but there are injury concerns with him. I think he might fit that bill. He's a little bit smaller, 299, but fills that sort of area.
Yeah, and so I wonder, I do think the world of Johnny Newton, who wasn't able to participate in the combine, right? So I'd be fairly excited about potentially replacing Christian Wilkins if they did go Byron Murphy or Johnny Newton at 20 or 21 overall. But if they're going anywhere below that, it either feels like you're getting a T'Vondre Sweat to be essentially Michael Pierce, in this defense. Which I do think fits, and that would happen at 55 overall, not at 21 overall, or perhaps Braden Fisk, who won't be there at 55 overall. Otherwise, I'm not sure that you're really replacing Christian Wilkins, and thus it does kind of bring me toward the free agent market in replacing Christian Wilkins in this particular class with the defensive line, the big boys, the defensive tackles. So that's kind of my only takeaway from the combine, watching them.
Yeah, Simon, one guy that I really like and man, his tape is good, and he ran a blazing fast time, and he's a day 3 guy. But I just don't know, man. He was just not blessed with the size to play in the NFL. But there has to be a fit for this guy, Kalen DeLoach of FSU. Man, I've always liked him as a player. If he was 230 pounds, he's a day 2 guy. Where's his fit in the NFL, or does he even have one?
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it, with guys like this? I mean,
Yeah.
the game has changed so much, hasn't it, in terms of, expectancy of, yeah, people were talking about, linebackers. You know, we don't have those 260-pound linebackers anymore, do we? Or the Levon Kirkland's at 275. And I was just looking at the linebacker numbers there earlier on in terms of, you know, I'm just trying to see if there's, okay, so Chris Braswell was 251, but you probably call him an edge, not a linebacker. And then beyond that, I'm just looking at the numbers right now, which doesn't make great radio, but there's not a single player over 250. Dallas Turner's an edge at 247. Gabe Murphy's an edge at 247. I mean, you're looking at linebackers here at 230, 232. It's that there aren't that many, and Kalen was what, 5'11, 210?
Yes.
Ran a 455. I mean, it's difficult to know where to put him because, is he a bit like Jeremy Chin in many respects, a guy who can play close to the line of scrimmage as a box safety, really. Is he going to be he's going to have to make his money on special teams because at 210 pounds, he isn't going to play linebacker. You certainly can't hold up there. So what you're looking for is a kind of a hybrid box running, alley running safety who can be a special teams captain. And I think that's, it's disappointing for him that, his body just naturally doesn't take on and add the weight that you'd expect. So to me, that's where he's going to be day 3, free agent kind of guy, and somebody that a coach or is going to bang the table and say, what, I can make him into a backup hybrid safety. Don't worry, let me bring him in. Let me, is he coachable? I don't know the answer to that question. Is he coachable?
The one hope, Simon, though, is do you remember what Matt Milano came in at when it was his turn at the combine?
No, I don't know, not off the top of my head.
He was just barely over 6 foot tall and 223 pounds.
Oh, nice.
And he was very much in college that light-ish. Is he going to be a safety? He can't really be a linebacker. And yet all the plays that he made at Boston College a lot of the plays that he made were in kind of like in pass rush. And so he was kind of a do it all, but it didn't make a whole lot of sense either. And so at the end of the day, the talent willed out. So so that's the hope.
I mean, it could just be that kind of overhang nickel, couldn't he? Somebody that just comes in as, role specific on obvious passing downs, because he is explosive as an athlete. He's very good in coverage. His range, he can get sideline to sideline. And maybe that's just, how he has to, he can blitz well. He's a very good blitzer, a number of big plays at Florida State, remember, so maybe he's just primarily that kind of nickel overhang.
Like 10.5 tackle TFLs, 7
sacks. Exactly. So, there are certainly developmental traits there. And it's going to be a coach and a scout kind of falling in love and thinking, what I can probably do with something like this in a sub package on third downs and a special team standout and somebody that can cover as well. So,
All right, moving on to Friday, defensive backs and tight ends. 2 great groups, I thought. Although tight ends, I wouldn't call it top heavy because I think you could get a good player late in the top 100. But man, what a group. I guess we'll start with tight ends. There was a lot to like here, wasn't there, Simon? I'll go ahead and give you a guy that, man, he was twitched up, looked great. I thought was Theo Johnson, but there was so much more to like. Your thoughts of this entire group, and I think they're going to improve on boards. I think before we were thinking 1 in the first round, I'm thinking there could be a second that could sneak into that first round, and I don't think Dolphin fans are going to like who I think that second guy might be. But what do you think, Simon? Good.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting group. You talked about Theo Johnson. We talked about. I thought Ben Sinnott was excellent in terms of his performances and answering some of the questions in terms of times. Chris's guy Tip Ryman, I think, was excellent. Had a really good day. Dallin Holker, he had the two-handed catch, but he looked good in doing what Dallin Holker does in terms of catching the ball. Devin Culp ran a ridiculously fast time at. He's 231 pounds, but still 447 is fantastic. I think, to me, that in many regards, the disappointment in inverted commas was the time by Jatavion Sanders. You think there's a guy, it feels to me, Chris, I don't know about you, maybe a little bit of water weight there at 6'3", 245, maybe, probably played in the 230s, I would reckon. I just expected him to run faster. I do know he's a guy, I think we're all aware he's a guy that the Dolphins, are interested in and that they like. I thought Jaheim Bell performed really well. I think he looked good. The 461 was a really nice time for a player that's what he is. You get him in space. He's a Swiss Army knife. He's explosive. He bounces off tackles. He turns into a running back when he gets the ball in his hands. And I suppose the one disappointing, the one interesting thing, maybe it's the guy that didn't work out, Chris, which is, Brock Bowers, who isn't going to blow you away with that size. I mean, that 6'3" for a tight end is, that's small for an NFL starting tight end. You're probably looking at 6'5", and I know the game is changing and it has changed, but he is, again, that felt a little bit like water weight. He doesn't look like a 243 pounder to me when he stood up, and the fact that he didn't practice, just you do see him sort of slipping a little bit into the teens. And at what point does he get into an area where I know the Dolphins don't have any picks, but at what point does he get into an area where you think you almost can't not move up to take him?
Yeah, I think so. About it's interesting because we were having a little bit of a discussion about this earlier today, and so about the tight ends. Let's start comparing it to last year, because last year was supposed to be a blowout year for the tight end class. Of course, the Dolphins didn't really participate, and we kind of all wanted them to. And then, afterwards we got that quote from Chris Greer about both he was talking about tight ends as well, where he was like, you guys are a little bit more worried about that than we are. But, last year, I think if you look at the class, you did have up at the top, Dalton Kincaid and Sam Laporta went first too. And then you had Michael Mayer, Luke Musgrave, the Schoonmaker, who we made fun of incessantly, Brenton Strange, Tucker Kraft, Darnell Washington, Cameron Latu kind of pulled up the rear on day two, and didn't actually take any snaps this year because he was injured. So, but I'm looking at that and I'm kind of seeing it within context of this year's class, and I'm like, well, yeah, but as a top two, Dalton Kincaid and Sam Laporta, if you compare them to Brock Bowers and Jatavion Sanders, I kind of would take Brock Bowers and Jatavion Sanders, wouldn't you? Like in terms of what I love Sam Laporta a lot. So I think that there's a good top two with this group. I think the Dolphins are interested in Jatavion Sanders. Yes, I was a little bit disappointed with Sanders, 40 time, but sometimes that's about track technique. There's a lot of track technique that goes into it. What I know is that on film, when he was a little bit lighter coming out of high school, he did clock 21 miles an hour on the field, on football tape, and there are ways of doing that there, especially now with the advent of AI and different deep learning engines that can process tape. I mean, you can get that kind of data off of how these guys are moving on tape, and I'm not worried about how he's moving on tape. And so, this is where you kind of look at it and say, hey, is this an example of where his track technique was just not very good? I saw some other guys that was like, your strides are way too long. Your start is not good. That kind of thing. So yeah, I'm not particularly worried about Jatavion Sanders. I know the Dolphins and Mike McDaniel in particular are very interested in him. I think Brock Bowers is, no matter what he weighs, yes, 6'3", 240 pounds or whatever. I mean, that just we've sort of always compared him, or at least I've compared him a little bit to George Kittle to begin with, and that's basically what George Kittle was coming out. So not too worried about him there. I think Theo Johnson blew the doors off. I think that, when you take aside the top two with as I said before, Brock Bowers, Jahavian Sanders, then Theo Johnson is the best looking Y tight end, like the best looking real genuine Y prospect. And then, the guy that I talk about, Tip Ryman, he obviously blew the doors off of the combine, had, one of the great performances there, as did Theo Johnson. I think these guys compare very favorably to, guys in the back year like Brenton Strange and Tucker Kraft. I think that you look down the line and Jaheim Bell, I don't. Well, let's take, before I even get to Jaheim Bell, Ben Sinnott blew the doors off the combine. I think that you got to be, because you were very high on him heading into the combine based on his tape, Simon, and he did not disappoint at all. Like he had a really good combine performance. I think he compares very favorably to Michael Mayer last year. I mean, this is the same kind of guy, except he's even more athletic. He breaks tackles like Michael Mayer does, and he's a good blocker like Michael Mayer was. I think that there's a lot of flavors in this draft at the tight end position. Then you add Jaheim Bell, and my comp for him is actually, he should probably lose weight and try and be basically like an AJ Brown type wide receiver. Like at this weight, he was, I think he ran like a 4.61 or something like that. I think he can run faster if he were a little bit lighter, but I think he plays like a wide receiver. It's not that he doesn't block. The only guy in this draft that I think doesn't block is Eric All of Iowa. And he measured in wonderfully too. He's over 250 pounds. But he plays like a real wide receiver. He doesn't really block. He's not really comfortable in a phone booth and in tight spaces. But I think Jaheim Bell is just such a he's spicy. He plays with attitude and strength and dominance. And I think that he's a good receiver prospect, but the way he is with his height, weight, the NFL probably going to try him, in the backfield, at fullback, at H back, stuff like that. And I think he'd be a phenomenal contributor for any team. So.
Yeah. By the way, something interesting to me and probably nobody else, they showed Mike McDaniel every single day of the combine sitting in the stands. And the only day he was spotted with Anthony Weaver and Chris Greer side by side was when they had the DBs and the tight ends working. So maybe they're competing factions in the building there. You guys want to give us one cornerback that stood out? Because I heard something kind of interesting that Dennis Jeremiah said, and I think I agree with him. He says there will not be a safety in the top 40. You agree with that, Simon?
Maybe. I mean, I think Green Bay are desperate for a safety. So I think Tyler Nubin is an interesting safety prospect that, I think probably will go off the board first. In terms of the cornerback class, I mean, I thought, there were some players that I was extremely disappointed in, and actually in safeties as well. I thought Cam Kinchen's just absolutely probably, might have even pushed himself down to the third day.
He just crossed the finish line right now.
Yeah, I mean, Ennis Rakestraw running 4.54 at 183 pounds, I thought was pretty disappointing, given that he's getting quite a lot of love in the first round, back end of the first round. Look, I think Mike Sanra still just a guy I absolutely love. Jalen McMillan, the Washington receiver, talked about how Sanra still was the hardest player he played against, and in the national championship game, he's literally lining up and Sanra still standing opposite him going, you're going to run this and this play is this, and McMillan said he knew exactly what the plays were, and he said he was just so hard to play against. Nate Wiggins at 173 pounds is awfully light, and that shows up a little bit with his play strength. Who else was I impressed with? I thought the Georgia kid Kamari Lassiter was excellent. 5'11", 186 pounds. I thought he looked really good. And then I think the main kind of takeaway guy, Terrion Arnold looked excellent in the drills. I thought he ran a little bit slow. 4.51 wasn't amazing, but he was so super smooth in the drills. And then the guy that stood out for me was the guy that stood out in the Senior Bowl, really. That's Quinion Mitchell of Toledo, 195 pounds at 6 foot, ran a 433. I don't know about you, Chris, but I think they were the guys. I was most disappointed. I think Kalen King, who I think had a high standing coming into the year. He ran a 461, and I think is this a guy that you can turn and run with receivers down the field? I think he was as disappointing as, and actually I don't think he was as disappointing as Kinchins, because I thought Kinchins just looked completely lackluster. But yeah, those were the guys that kind of disappointed a little bit.
I think we're going to get, probably as usual, a lot of cornerback to safety converts in this draft, and we're getting to the point where a lot of the safeties in the NFL aren't necessarily drafted as safeties, or we're not necessarily safeties in college, I should say. So that's going to be the case again, and we have kind of a weaker true safety class, I think. I do think that Sione Vaki is a guy to pay attention to amongst the safeties because of his versatility. So he's not necessarily among the headline names or higher rated players, but he's a guy to watch out for. You bring up Mike Sainristil. I'm natural. I love his game. I do appreciate him as a prospect. Think he's probably rated far too low right now. I think Cam Hart of Notre Dame is a guy that people are far too low on. With his length, over 6'2", and good length, good arm length, and everything to go with it. He moves well. I think it shows up on tape that he moves well. I think his coverage skills, his hands are really, I appreciate his hands and his hand coordination, because the way that a couple of times he's been able to poke the ball out in coverage and tackling and such, and the way that he gets his hands on the football for a PBU. I really appreciate him. I don't think you find that sort of combination of his length and movement skills, cover skills, and hands very often. So I think that he's going to go probably a lot higher than people are having him right now.
Yeah, the other guy that, Kalen Bullock, I think, is an absolute center fielder at USC, and I think he's a really intriguing guy, interesting guy, good length. He was 188 pounds as a safety, and he just, ran a 449. He looked good. 151 split was excellent, and speaks to how he explodes towards the football. But 188 pounds, that is light for a safety in the NFL.
That's true.
Yeah. Almost impossible to play, really, especially with the defenses that most teams play nowadays. All right, we're going to go to break now, and when we come back, quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers. But first, these words.
At Valvoline Instant Oil Change, they're always quick, but never rushed. Stay in the comfort of your car for a quality oil change and 18-point maintenance check, all in about 15 minutes. No appointment needed. Valvoline Instant Oil Change. Quick, easy, trusted.
Discover Orlando's first ever beach paradise at Evermore Resort, a completely reimagined vacation destination right next to Walt Disney World. At the heart of Evermore Resort is 20 acres of tropical beaches with crystal clear swimming areas featuring fun activities like a rope swing, family water slide, and more. Designed for families of all sizes, Evermore offers accommodations up to 11-bedroom homes, all with the conveniences of a hotel. Evermore is now open. Book your stay today at evermoreresort.com.
Are you a South Florida property owner with an insurance claim? Are you dealing with water, mold, or fire damage to your home or business? Are you having trouble locating a 5-star rated general contractor that is fully licensed, certified, and insured? If the answer is yes, then Water Cleanup of Florida is here for you 24 hours a day. With over 60 years of combined experience, Michael, Robert, Jorge, and their team is prepared to handle any size property damage disaster. When an unexpected damage occurs to your home or business, you need specialized, fast, and reliable services. Water Cleanup of Florida understands the impact and stress an unexpected disaster may cause. Their objective is to make the cleanup and insurance claim process painless and hassle-free. Water Cleanup of Florida is also a licensed general contractor, so they provide the A to Z service, one-stop shopping that busy homeowners and business owners require. Water Cleanup of Florida is now an authorized dealer of Eurocraft cabinets, so premier kitchen, bath, and laundry cabinetry Countertops and other accessories are available for your viewing at their showroom in Boca Raton. Or do you prefer to shop from your home or office? Then Water Cleanup will send you one of our design specialists to you with samples and products that fit your style and budget. Call Michael anytime on his personal cell phone if you have any questions at 954-579-0356. That's 954-579-0356. Or visit their website at wcufl.com. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram. And please check out their more than 80 5-star reviews on Google and Facebook. Water Cleanup of Florida. If you have the schmutz, they have the guts.
I'm Jalen Phillips, and you're listening to 3 Yards Per Carry.
Moving on to Saturday, quarterbacks, wide receivers, and running backs. Man, watching these wide receivers, you almost have to have one. You got to get one in this draft. If you don't come away, if you have picks in the top 100 and you don't get a wide receiver, you're really missing out. This is a great group. I thought Ladd McConkey made the most money out of anybody in this combine. You could just see his bank account getting fatter with each drill. Even the gauntlet. I thought he was perfect in that gauntlet, shortening the distance between he and the quarterback, catching it clean on the tuck and then dropping it, moving on, and then had a good time in it. Ran a 40 and under 4.4. Yeah, Ladd McConkey, I thought, was the big winner on Saturday. What'd you like, Simon?
I mean, there was so much to like. I mean, so many players who just performed really well, who measured in well, who ran well. You know, you go, look, Keon Coleman struggled. He ran a 4.62, which was one of the slowest, if not the slowest time. But then he had the fastest time in the gauntlet drill. And I think that speaks to how, he plays faster than he times. He'll probably end up going in the second round now. But, and there's obviously stuff to work on in terms of his game. He doesn't run a full route tree, for example, and he's not a great route runner. But he is an interesting player. There were some lower down guys. Anthony Gould, I thought, had a decent performance. Ryan Flournoy, who I really enjoyed watching at Southeast Missouri State, I thought he had an excellent performance. 6 foot, 202, ran a 4.44, looked really good in the drills. 10-yard split of 153. He did really well. Obviously, people talk about Xavier Worthy, and seeing that 4.21 is great fun, and it's an astonishing time. But to me, he has the exact same evaluation as he did entering the combine. This is a guy that ran a 10.5 100 meters. We knew he was going to be fast. And he's also 165 pounds. And I know he cut some weight, but he only cut it from 172 pounds. So, I'm not necessarily sure it's realistic that people are just suddenly piling on Xavier Worthy is going to be like the third or the fourth guy. The big guys who I expected to perform really well did. Brian Thomas was excellent. And Roma Dunze just continues just to blow me away with everything that he does. He's a great talker. He looks great. He's big, he's physical, he's fast. He ran a 4.45 at 6'2", 212. Ricky Pearsall was excellent. I thought Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint looked good. Jamari Thrash, he ran a good time at 188 pounds. So I thought there was an awful lot, Chris, wasn't there? A lot of players. Xavier Leggett looked excellent. A lot of players where you just were like, yeah, I take him, or I take him, or I take him. The guy that disappointed me, Chris, I think more than anybody, was Troy Franklin of Oregon. 176 pounds. That's 11 down from his listed weight with the Ducks. And yep, he ran well, but I didn't think his drills looked particularly good. And, his change of direction didn't look amazing. And, in a deep collection of pass catchers, that could make a significant difference come draft day.
Yeah, I think Troy Franklin probably. I will say this: like, he pops up, and when you do the kind of the field testing of what kind of MPH these guys are commonly running at, I think that he pings on those measures a lot more than he did on during the combine with his 40 time there on Saturday. So yeah, it was probably a disappointing time. What was it, like a 4.41? I mean, can't even say it's that disappointing when it's a 4.41. But yeah, so I think he probably will try and do better at his pro day, because this is a guy who, based on what he's run on the field and sort of clocked at different moments, that you kind of expect to be solidly in the 4.3s. And based on his game, which, he is skinny, he is, but he is lengthy. He's drawing a lot of Marquez Valdez Scantling comparisons. I think that's that's probably a fair comparison in some ways. Yeah, this class of wide receivers, it's loaded. We knew it was loaded. Start at the top with Marvin Harrison. Like, he's as good as he is. Also, he's as big as he is, which is kind of like you see him measure at the combine. He's 6'3" and very solid weight, and it's just like what is not to love? Absolutely be in love with him. He's probably going to be the first non-quarterback taken, although
Apparently,
that
he
might
interviewed
not.
brilliantly as well.
Yeah, and although that might not happen, and what we hear, Diana Rossini was saying earlier, that the top four quarterbacks are just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, according to a GM that she was talking to, and so Marvin Harrison might have to wait till number 5 before he actually goes. But yeah, this is stacked. Malik Neighbors and Roma Dunze easily belong up top. With Marvin Harrison Jr. I think Brian Thomas showed the way he needed to show. I think that he had good interviews. He had good testing. For a guy that made so much of his hay in college on, as we said in the last podcast, vertical separation. Running the go route, putting up the mailbox, adjusting to the ball in the air, and finishing the catch. That he did what he needed to do. I think that the Pete and Keon Coleman entered with sort of a controversial figure, and I think he left a controversial figure because and that was the combine that he had. I mean, you said it yourself. He had a bad 40 time, and yet during drills he was pinging speeds on the GPS that other guys weren't. Ladd McConkey, I think, made a lot of money. Easily going to be a very good prospect, probably first round. So I think that we've got, and then I should mention Xavier Legette, one of my absolute favorite wide receivers in this draft. Of course, blew the doors off. He runs a 4.39. He's 223 pounds or something like that. 6'1". He's
Metcalf 2.0, isn't he?
Yeah, he's just an absolute brilliant athlete that didn't really produce until his final year at South Carolina, and that's where I think people are going to have questions. But at the same time, sometimes you like the guy that had to toil away, in frustration and figure out the formula, to make it work, because those guys, have an idea. Opportunities didn't come easy for some guys. And so they might know more about being a professional than some other guys who the opportunities always came pretty easy for. And, I go back to Cameron Wake with that. He was the same way in college. Light came on as far as his work ethic and attention to detail. That's what I see in Xavier Legette. That's what the guy destroys man coverage. And I think that a lot of guys just perform very well. I will say one thing about Xavier Worthy. He dropped down to 165, and this is where I have a little bit of disagreement. He probably dropped down to 165 because he was going for the record. Well, he went for it and he got it. So it's not like he dropped down to 165 and then turned in a 4.35. That I think he dropped down because he wanted that record since he was a kid, and there's something to be said for prepping for, working hard, working the endless hours and preparation to try and do something that you've been wanting to do since you were a kid. And frankly, it's something that's important for the NFL too. I'm not going to minimize it, because it was important to Chris Johnson when he set that record. It was important to John Ross when he broke it, and it is similarly important to Xavier Worthy when he when he broke John Ross's record. I mean, John Ross went 9th overall. Nobody thought he was worth that. But so this is going to make Xavier Worthy some money. I think there's something to be said for having a goal, going out and doing it. And as far as the weight is concerned, yeah, it is concerning to be that light. But at the same time, Deshaun Jackson was 169 pounds coming out of Cal. He had a brilliant NFL career. And I think that Tutu Atwell, we made a lot of jokes about him coming out, because I was actually a big fan, but then he measures in 165 pounds, and we're talking about the wind blowing him away. But he's starting to blossom this year with the Rams. They started to use him particularly. They copied how Miami uses Tyreek Hill with those short motions, those fast motions, and he started to really blossom in the NFL. So I think Xavier Worthy has a shot in today's NFL, in particular. And so, I would pay attention to him. I would pay attention to his tape and what he can do and his speed and, just the overall what he presents to your team. I think he will gain back weight now that he's broken the record and got what he wanted to. But 170 pounds, if he's another Deshaun Jackson, that's going to be great for himself and his career.
I would worry about the play strength. Deshaun Jackson is a strong player. Worthy does not. This is not.
And that is the number one. I mean, Wes Welker's talked about that too with the guys like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, who was himself only 180 pounds when he came out. And I think that the play strength is huge. It will be something that deserves the scrutiny, and so I agree with you there.
All right, and finishing up here, offensive lineman, that was last day. Mike McDaniel stuck it out. Only he and Doug Peterson were the only coaches.
Get out there for offensive linemen. I mean, Jesus, if they go on home, then we may as well all give up.
So I think we can finish up here. And I'll start with you, Simon. Troy Fatano, out of reach now, huh?
I mean, look, it's horses for courses. I think in terms of some of these players, like we all have guys that we really like. We know that Joe Alt is going to go high. We know that Graham Barton is going to be in the mix in that first round area. We know that obviously Fashanu, I would call him Fashanu in this country, but in America you clearly call him Fashanu. Talizi Fuaga is going to go. Guyton is in the mix. We obviously saw Amarius Mims look like an absolute monster. JC Latham, is he going to play left tackle? Is he going to play right tackle? It just sort of depends on who. It's really hard to call because it just depends on which team, which coach kind of really fancies which particular player. Who is Fuaga going to play right tackle? Is somebody going to move him to left tackle? Are they going to play him at guard? That and different things will mean different things to different teams. Who will see Amarius Mims and 7 career starts only as a right tackle? How will that be projected? Will they just think, look, here's a guy that looks like Laramie Tunsil, and we're going to play him at left tackle, but maybe we can't start him because he's only ever had 7 starts and none of which have been on the left side. Tyler Guyton, I spoke to a scout who said, his ceiling is Tyron Smith, but he's a right tackle. Now, does he move across to the left tackle spot? Is he going to stay at right tackle? There are some really good right tackles in this draft. You look at someone like Roger Rosengarten, who gets absolutely zero love. This is a guy that could end up going in the second round, was one of the most athletic offensive linemen at the combine at the weekend. So, because there are so many question marks, aren't there, in terms of you've got Fatano at 6'3", you look at Amarius Mims at 6'8", you look at Fuaga, you look at Tyler Guyton at 6'7". There are JC Latham was 6'5", and so I don't think it's out of the realms of possibility that he's available at 21 for the sole reason that certain teams are not going to knock as highly regarded. He doesn't hit those landmarks of height that you are looking for. Green Bay is a team historically that is happy with undersized, in inverted commas, left tackles. Other teams will not consider a guy under 6'5", and also it's position. Look, do you look at Amarius Mims and think he's had 7 starts? Am I going to play him on the right side, or the left side, given he's never played a snap in college football at left tackle? Am I going to move him over there? But knowing that he's potentially got Laramie Tunsil upside, insane athletic movement skills, and he's 6'8" and 340 pounds and looks like Bucky Irving when he runs. Where's Fuaga going to play? Is Fuaga a right tackle? Is he going to be a right guard? Is he going to be a left guard? Is he going to be a left tackle? I think it all just depends on what teams are looking for. And that there's some really good right tackles in this draft. You look at Blake Fisher of Notre Dame, a really good player on tape. You look at Roger Rosengarten of Washington, who's had absolutely zero love in this process, who is, he's 6'5", he's 308 pounds, he ran a 4.92. He had the best he had the best 10-yard split of any lineman in this class. There's a day one starter at right tackle. I mean, you even go down to people like, and God forbid Miami takes him in the first round, but, Patrick Paul of Houston, who I think needs to be broken down completely in terms of technique, but he's 6'7", he's 331 pounds. I think he had the highest bench press even though he's got 36.25-inch arms. I think he had 33 reps or 38 reps or something. So I just think, Alf, it's kind of, and Chris, I just think it's horses for courses, isn't it? You just can't really tell. You throw a Jackson Powers-Johnson into the mix as well as another offensive lineman who likely will go in that sort of 10 to 24 area. And I just don't think with the 4 quarterbacks, the receivers, you throw in Neighbors, potentially Thomas, but definitely Neighbors, Odunze, Harrison. You know, there's a couple of cornerbacks that will go. You got Dallas, Thomas will go. Some teams might fall in love with Chop Robinson in terms of what he did and go in that region. It's hard to think that you're going to get all of those linemen to go between picks, 5, because I can't see a lineman being taken before the 6th pick. Now, there may be a run on them, and you look at teams, Tennessee might, Pittsburgh, the Rams could look at a center, but I wouldn't be shocked if Fatanu was still there. And I also wouldn't be shocked if he went at 13. That's just the nature of the beast.
I think on that tackle class, it's sum it up this way. I think that there's 8 in the tackle class that, I believe to have separated themselves from the rest, with the next group having guys like Kingsley Suamataia and Patrick Paul and so on and so forth. I think, Joe Alt, Olu Fashanu, Talish Fuaga, J.C. Latham, Marius Mims. This is no particular order, but Troy Fatanu, and Tyler Guyton, and then Jordan Morgan of Arizona.
Yeah,
I think
who also performed really well.
He did, and he's reputed as a good athlete. So I think he had one of the fastest 10-yard splits at 1.70, something like that. And that's about right for him, right? That's so. Yeah. But just think about the fact that 8 of those guys, if there's 8 of those guys up there at the top, we have, 4 career right tackles.
Yep.
Among them.
Guyton,
and 4
Mims,
career left.
Latham. Yeah.
Guyton, Mims, Latham, and
Fuaga. Yeah.
Yeah, and those are career for right tackles. Okay, that's not hey, I played a season at right tackle or something like that. And then you got Alt Fashanu and Fatanu and Morgan who played left tackle. And I agree with you in the main that it's going to be. It's going to be, what do you need? What do you need? What's your vision for this player? And it's going to be, pairing up because of all that. But I think that Faltanu, with the blowout performance that he generally had, and I'm not just including the actual measures, I'm talking about the drills. He was just one of the best.
Like a tight end.
Yeah, it's one of the best set of offensive line drills that I've seen, from that guy. I think the fact that he's one of only 4 left tackles in that top group, then I think that yes, he probably will be out of reach for Miami at 21. It wouldn't shock me to the end of my days that he's available at 21, but at the same time, I would say because he's one of only 4 left tackles, that maybe that helps him a little bit. Whereas some of the right tackles, Fuaga, Latham, Mims, Guyton, you could see them because they're career right tackles, you could see them go a little lower than perhaps their talent. But it also depends because, they're talking about in the combine, Joe Alt, if the Chargers are going to take Joe Alt, they're not going to put him at left tackle,
No.
And so he's going to have to move to right tackle. So are you going to have this situation where this very weird situation? You got a bunch of left tackles moving over to right tackle and right tackles moving to left tackle. That doesn't really happen in the NFL that often. You do see left tackles move to right tackle, but you do not see right tackles move to left tackle that often.
And if you're the Chargers, you could absolutely move down. You're a prime spot to move down, aren't you? Because you know that there are 4 career right tackles that you could take, you could move down 5 or 6 spots, pick up an extra 2 or 3 at worst, and then still take a J.C. Latham or a Talizi Fuaga or whoever.
No, absolutely correct. I think that, and they've got, so they really are sitting in a good spot. And, particularly since if the quarterbacks are going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, then I think that they're sitting in a fairly advantageous spot where they could have Marvin Harrison if they want at number 5 probably. But they could also trade that pick to somebody who's, really got the hots for Marvin Harrison and still pick up one of those right tackles. So, I think definitely it's, as you said, it depends on your need. It's going to depend on how you come out of it. But yeah, Fatano, unfortunately, from my standpoint, I am going to assume that he's not available at 21. Because he's one of only 4 of the left tackles, and because he was phenomenal.
The guy that I think, and we talked about this, is Mims. He's an archetypal Chris Greer guy, like athletic for days, insane size, upside off the charts, Georgia guy. The concern for me is that, to me, I think that because of all the issues that we have with the cap, and I think probably significantly structurally, we're not going to be as strong a team as we were this year in terms of pure talent. To me, this is a team that needs to hit, especially with the last two, in inverted commas, failures with the last 2 drafts, not having the guys come through and replace players, Tyndall for Baker, Smith for Howard yet. If that happens at all, I think they've got to find 3 starters out of their picks. I think they've got to find 3 starters. And if you kick off with a guy who only has 7 starts, where are you going to play him on day one? He's also 6'8", and you've got a 6 foot and a 6'1" quarterback. Do you want a 6'8" guy playing left guard, clogging up your passing lanes for a guy who's 7 inches shorter? It's a very interesting question that I think, I'd love to be in that room, but he ticks so many boxes, Mims, in terms of what you expect Greer to like. But then there are a lot of downsides, and again, they can't afford to miss.
All right, moving on.
Fair.
Yeah, moving on to the interior offensive lineman. If I told you that there was a Wisconsin center that got a perfect next gen stats athleticism score, would you be interested? I know I would, because if you were looking at Twitter on Sunday, everybody was doing the Shaq meme. I don't know if are you familiar with the Shaq meme, Simon? I wasn't familiar with, I apologize. I wasn't familiar with your game. Here's the problem. Lance Zierlein has released his comparables already, and I got to say, I completely agree. His comparable for Tanner Bortolini is Michael Dieter. Besides Tanner Bortolini.
What?
That's Lance Zierlein.
That's. I mean, Lance just phoned that, or he just phoned that one in.
He phoned that in.
Yeah,
he's the king of the comparables.
Yeah, you love him, don't you, Chris? That's not accurate at all.
You love the guy because he's got a mullet, and
well,
yeah, I guess it's definitely mullet power.
I've never been. I watch Wisconsin a lot. The Kellen Balaj Award winner is on that team, so I watched them. He just never struck me as a top prospect. Now he blew me away and blew everybody else away here at the combine. Like I didn't know he was this. He has ideal size. Everything's right about him. So I guess you want to speak a little bit about him. Go ahead, hit it, Chris.
I've been high on him for a long time, actually. I mean, I've been talking about him as one of the top center prospects. I mean, clearly among center prospects for the Miami Dolphins, you do have Jackson Powers Johnson. I don't know whether Graham Barton moves to center or not. I have a little bit of discomfort there just because he hasn't played center at Duke in a long time. And when he did play, he was still very young, so it's not as if he, really stood out a whole lot. I think Zach Frazier, if you're trying to take a guy that fits the system for Miami, then Zach Frazier's your guy. I mean, you just pick him out of a lineup and say, well, that's the dude that plays like you need in this system. Jackson Powers Johnson, on the other hand, kind of might add a little bit of non-core competency to the system because of his power and strength. I think that those, and then Cedric Van Granger with the, he's a high IQ player. He's very accomplished at Georgia. I think those are the guys that the top center prospects that we've probably always been looking about, but I have always included Tanner Bortolini at the tail end of that group. And I think that he is a guy that stands out with his length, with his mobility, with his technique, and just overall abilities at Wisconsin. And you have to take note when they're running the drills, and before he even goes through the drills, and he had some of the best set of drills outside of Troy Fatano. He had some of the best set of drills that you'd see. You have to pay attention when they're characterizing guys who have done the research into the character and what the schools say about him, and what the interviewers say about him. And he's known as a cerebral center, and then he also blows the doors off athletically. I know Sean O'Hara, who's a great NFL center in his own right during his career with the Giants. He got up and talked about Tanner Bortolini and said that before he did anything. And he was just like, I can't wait to watch this guy, because this guy is really phenomenal. He stood out to him on tape. I think this guy has always stood out on tape to me. Not everybody's going to stand out on tape to everybody. I think that that's just the reality of the way the draft is. But for me, he was always in that top group, probably at the tail end of it, somewhere around where Cedric Van Pran Granger is. And I think that this combine performance kind of solidified for me that if the Dolphins were to take one of those guys at 55 year overall, between Zach Frazier or Cedric Van Pran or now Tanner Bortolini, that to me is a home run at that level of the draft. And I think that he had that kind of performance at the combine, but he also had that kind of performance at Wisconsin based on what I was seeing.
A low lift number, Alf. I think he only had 20 reps.
21 reps. 21 reps.
Mm-hmm. But as Chris says, look, this is a guy that started left guard, he started right guard, he started at center, and he started at tight end all since 2022. So, if you're looking for position versatility as somebody that can play multiple spots on the offensive line, then he is that guy. And of course, he has a mullet.
Yeah. I think we could, unless you guys want to add anything else to this group, I think we could.
He also played, by the way, he played right tackle.
Yeah. I think the quarterbacks are interesting to talk about, Alf, just in terms of, Miami obviously aren't in the market.
Oh, there was one guy I did want to ask about. Kingsley Suamata. Your thoughts, Simon?
Ask the question and I'll tell you. What do I think about Kingsley Suamata? So I think he's an interesting player. Again, a multi-position player who's played both sides. He's an Oregon guy, Oregon transfer, a 5-star recruit. And he's been a fairly dominant right tackle. He's only played 1 year at left tackle, so switched in 2023. And I thought he struggled early on in the season, just kind of getting his feet under him and hitting his landmarks. But I thought he got much better as the season progressed. And he's athletic, he's toolsy. There are some technique issues. There are some football intelligence question marks. I think he's Penei Sewell's cousin as well. And he's a baby. He's literally just turned 21. So I think there's definite upside there. The BYU coaching staff raved about him. He's the highest rated player I think they've ever had at BYU in terms of his star rating. Or maybe since the Lavelle Edwards era, the kind of going back to the Ty Detmer kind of national championship era, certainly. But yeah, he's a big human being. Whether he's a right tackle or left tackle remains to be seen. But I think there's definitely stuff to work with, and I think he's probably a day 2, probably a 3rd round, maybe early 4th round kind of guy. And it just depends on where you want to play, left or right side.
Simon, do you remember who your favorite tackle prospect from 2022 was?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Went to the Seahawks? Are you getting?
Charles Cross or the right tackle, Abe Lucas.
Abraham Lucas.
Abe Lucas, yeah.
That's who Lance Zierlein has him as a comparable.
Yeah, I don't think he's as accomplished as Abe Lucas was. Abe Lucas was very.
For our listeners, by the way, Abe Lucas went 72 overall.
72nd, yeah.
Yeah, I think Abe Lucas was very accomplished, very technical. I don't think Kingsley Suamataia is technical yet. The way that he's built, or the way that he's come up, I do question whether, given what Simon says about Dolphins needing immediate contributors, with Kingsley, I question coming from BYU against the sort of pass rushers that he played against over there, coming into the Dolphins starting right away. That would be kind of a question mark for me, but it's clear that this is an upside play. He's got nearly the same measurements as his cousin Penei Sewell. If you look at just the way he's built, the height, weight, arm length, the speed, agility, all of that stuff. He really tested out like his cousin. And he's ambidextrous. He's moved from right tackle to left tackle for a reason. He is ambidextrous, and so that is a plus for Miami. If we're talking about somebody to play left tackle in place of Teron Armstead, either this year or some future year. I think he's a good young upside prospect, but man, he's still rough around the edges to me right now. I watched him in the All-Star stuff, in practices and in the game itself, and this is a beatable player right now. And so I kind of question that, but clearly the upside. Clearly he's 21 years old, and he just turned 21 years old, and I think that that's what you're looking at.
All right, I think we can leave it here. On Thursday, we will talk free agency. We'll be intensive on that. On the 11th is the tampering period, which essentially just means that free agency starts. Because if you don't think they were tampering already in Indianapolis, then But we will get into that on Thursday.
Just mention the quarterbacks very quickly, Arthur, because I thought that Michael Penix was, look, I know they're just thrown to air and, not against corners or whatever, but I thought Michael Penix solidified all the reasons why we love Michael Penix in terms of, the revolutions on the ball, the way, the ball just whips off his hand. He's got this kind of whippy delivery. He's got great arm strength, just the ability to make all the throws. I thought Penix, this is going to be a really difficult evaluation for people because, what he does inside, and when I'm writing the draft guide, as I have been over the last few months, he reminds me so much of Tua in many regards, not because of the clearly the traits are different. He's significantly more toolsy, but in terms of play style, in terms of accuracy, some struggles out of structure. His accuracy slips when he's moved from his landmark, and pressure sort of affects his clock. But in terms of the accuracy, the delivery, the timing, the whip of the ball, all of those things, the layering balls to different layers of the field, Penix is exactly the same as Tua. And, it would be interesting if Tua didn't exist and we had a Mike McDaniel offense, and yet we knew what the offense was, because you'd say Penix is the absolute perfect fit for a Mike McDaniel offense in terms of all of the things that we love seeing Tua do. Penix has the similar skill set. He just has the bigger arm. But I thought he was.
I think Simon, along those lines, wouldn't you compare him to Matthew Stafford?
Yeah, absolutely.
Matthew Stafford plays in this offense, and he operates this offense, and so a lot of the things that he does are going to be pretty similar to Tua. I don't think he gets the ball out quite as quickly as Tua, but who does? Yeah. But at the same time, he's got the big arm, and there was a time when Matthew Stafford could not stay healthy. Which includes right now. And so, I think that's the comparison to me, is like a left-handed Matthew Stafford, just, extensive injury history. And I'm with you 100%.
Yeah. Also, Alf, I just want to say that Peyton Wilson, I thought, was outstanding as a linebacker. The injuries aside, I thought he was excellent. And running backs, I thought it was great to see Trey Benson kind of confirm the speed that you see on tape in terms of what he does. But also Jalen Wright, who I absolutely love at Tennessee. I thought he had the best kind of overall combination of terms of, the drills, the broad jump, the vertical, the 40, all of those sorts of things. I thought, he solidified himself as a legit day two back. And, this is a guy that's averaged 6.7 yards the last 2 years in the SEC. He's a home run hitting threat, and I thought he showed everything that he's my number 2 rated back behind Benson, and the gap is not very big. And I thought he showed it all in Indy as to the reasons why.
Some lower guys down there. I think Ray Davis of Kentucky and Tyrone Tracy of Purdue.
Good player.
He's a wide receiver convert with Tracy. I think that those could be guys that Miami could be interested in. Day 3-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the quarterbacks, I don't think you can glean too much by the drills that they do, throwing against air in their underwear. But I was surprised that Spencer Rattler ran a 4.95. I thought he was a better athlete than that. I thought he would run like a four in the 4.7s or
He didn't
so.
look very. He looked like he was going to fall over for the last 20 meters.
Yeah, he
I mean,
looked different. He looked different to me because
he's
he looked like a different picture of what I had in my head of what Spencer Rattler would be at the combine. I thought he was going to be like a twitched up quarterback running like 4.72, 4.74 or
but
something
he
like
is
that.
mobile on tape. He can
Yeah.
move the pocket and he can pick up yards. He's tough and he's such an interesting.
But when you're beaten by 28 offensive linemen
yeah,
and
he is an
defensive
interesting
linemen, that's not
evaluation.
good. And you're 40, you know what I mean?
I thought it was great that Joe Milton got a chance to show off the
Yeah.
arm that he has.
Yes.
Which is just a ridiculous arm.
Yeah, I think the most valuable thing we learned about these quarterbacks is that Joe Milton can throw an orange 100 yards.
He is I mean, that is a monster arm, and that throw that he sort of faded away and almost didn't see the catch that went 71 yards. He didn't look like he put, No. I was at flag football the other day and I threw a pass that went 42 yards and I felt my soul leave my body as I whipped it downfield and it was caught and it went for a touchdown. But honest to God, like 42, that's a long handoff for Joe Milton. It was just like unbelievable.
Yeah. Do you believe him? He says he can throw it 90 yards if he just winds up to fire it.
On the right day with the right wind, I definitely believe him.
Yeah, really? I think he could throw the ball further on his knees than I could, or maybe even on his back than I could throw it.
Look, because we have some evidence. There used to be a quarterback challenge every single year, and Brett Favre has the all-time record at 78 yards. So
yeah,
that's Brett Favre. So I don't know.
No, I
call bullshit.
I think he can on the right day with the right wind. I definitely
in a dome. Let's
90
just talk about a
yards
dome. Let's say right there in Indianapolis, you get to wind up.
Also, the good thing about the combine is, this is going to sound patronizing. I don't mean it to, but it allows players who are probably not going to make it in the NFL, and I class Joe Milton as one of those, the opportunity to show, that throw that Joe Milton throws, he's going to show his kids that in 20 years time. And, that's a thing that means something. Yeah. I don't think he's good enough to be an NFL quarterback. He just, for reasons we can get into another day, but that's something that, and for all the Malik Neighbors and Jaden Daniels not measuring and players not having physicals and all those sorts of things, and guys now having agents when they're 17 because of NIL and all that comes with that. And I think it's great that kids get paid in college, but it still affords those kind of lower guys the opportunity to go out and be able to look back and say, you know what, I performed at the NFL scouting combine and I didn't let myself down. And for Joe Milton, that's kudos to him.
One last
thing,
because
I wouldn't be surprised if Milton got a lot of chances in the NFL, though. By the time
I don't see him as a long-term starting quarterback. He just doesn't seem to me to have that.
One last thing before we get out of here. TJ Tampa, 3 days ago, there was a story. Well, 3 days before the combine, there was a story where he declared, I will work at the combine. I will run the 40-yard dash. The day before the combine, he cancels on the combine. He just shows up for interviews. Something there? You think he got hurt in training? Or do you have any other information on that?
He might have done. I mean, he did have a hamstring injury. So I wonder whether or not maybe he just felt like he wasn't. And I completely understand guys who think, you know what, you're gonna go out. Like Chris, we talked yesterday about Zach Worthy, or maybe it was you, Alf, talked about how he's coming back from the broken leg and probably didn't look himself, but and he'll get absolute kudos for turning up and performing through it when he's clearly not 100%. But there's no point in Tampa in a position that merits speed so importantly. If Tampa turns up with a poor hammy and runs a 4.6, or lower, no matter how many times he says, "Oh, I've got a bad hamstring," that could push him down 2 rounds and cost him significant cash. So I do understand it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought it was just you never see guys just cancel the day before,
No.
So yeah, I think that's he got hurt. He got hurt in training for the combine. All right, we're gonna leave it there. On Thursday, we're gonna be free agency intensive. Maybe there'll be some movement as far as extensions from now until then, and we'll talk about that as well.
there will not be an extension for Christian Wilkins. He is Gonzville, ladies and gentlemen.
Oof.
Yes. And I think man, Houston has a lot of cap space. Chicago has a lot of cap space. I think he's going to get the money, and I'll make a prediction.
Good for him. And look, I don't get people complaining about, oh, he's done this for 5 years and he's done that for 5 years and he's in the way he should get paid by the Dolphins and blah blah blah. It's a business. It is an absolute business, and I absolutely applaud Christian Wilkins' ability to go out, and he backed himself and he won. Miami lost, and that's just how it works out sometimes. And it's great to try and keep everybody, but unfortunately, that's not the way. And as good as defensive tackles are, and certain ones are, Chris Jones has not won the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes has won the Super Bowl. Do you know what I mean? In terms of delivering in the biggest moments. Defensive tackles are great pieces, but they are not the 4 cornerstone pieces, and they do not individually themselves win Super Bowls. I've never seen a defensive tackle individually win a Super Bowl. As good as Aaron Donald was against Cincinnati, that game was won by Matthew Stafford driving down the field at the end of the game to win that. So,
and for those that are saying San Francisco just paid Jason Hargrave 4 years, $81 million, he just had a bad year. Okay, yeah. He was better in Philadelphia.
Frankly, I think Aaron Donald's the only guy that I've seen in a while that I would feel comfortable about that sort of
but
that sort of payday.
That is literally the only guy.
People that are thinking that you're gonna negotiate with Christian Wilkins. I'm here to make a prediction. Only Aaron Donald and Chris Jones will be paid more per year.
Yeah, and why shouldn't he believe that he should be paid? Yeah, he the knock on him, and we said it all along, the knock on him was that he didn't have the sack numbers, and then he turned in 9.5, 10 sacks last season, along with no letdown in what he has done so well, which is tackles for losses, which is playing, as a high energy energizer bunny along that defensive line, making tackle after tackle in the run game. And he delivered on sacks. Why should he not think, and I'm sure he will be, but why should he not think that he would be the 3rd or 4th highest paid, at worst, defensive lineman in history? And good luck to him. He's been an incredible player, and I don't want to see him go, but unfortunately, that's the reality of the business.
Yeah. We'll get into it on Thursday, but till then.
Thanks for listening to 3 Yards Per Carry. You can subscribe via iTunes, on Podbean, or your usual podcast provider.
Today, I want to talk about the hellscape that is technical diagramming, right? Everybody's nodding their heads right now, And there is a potential solution that I want to share. There was one name that several people brought up. I did some digging, and it's kind of nuts how much this program Miro has for developers. I have to share this. It could potentially be a game changer for you. So my favorite part about Miro is that half the work is already done. Like right now, typically we spend hours starting diagrams from scratch, right? Gathering information, you get buy-in from every team. Following up, that's a lot of work to do. But Miro has a full set of integrations with the tools you're probably already using. And they also offer open APIs and SDKs for custom solutions for all those niche diagramming use cases we have to do, right? So the end result is the same, but it doesn't take forever. It's a massive, massive time saver. I'm transforming basic flowcharts and network architectures, and it all lives in one place. So are you using Miro? Have you used it? I want to hear.
Over the last 40 years, we have followed our founder's vision to become a powerful force within our communities, forging long, lasting relationships that redefine what's possible. We've empowered generations with tailored solutions to guide you toward opportunity, toward financial fortitude, toward success. That's the power of Ocean. Ocean Bank. Member FDIC.